We have Keith Godey, Trey Johnson, and George Sagan. Thanks all.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm Keith Godey. I lead cloud strategy for Velosio, and really what that means is I work a lot with clients and help them figure out what technology is right for them and how they adopt those different technologies to further enable their business.
Excellent. And I'm joining Keith today and George. My name is Trey Johnson. I run our data and analytics practice here at Velosio. And so excited to talk about how data factors is maybe an underpinning of a lot of the trends and innovations that are coming in 2024.
Yes, and hi, my name is George Sagan. I'm the third man on the team here. I'm an pre-sales engineer. So my normal daily role is to try to match solutions to customers' needs, provide estimates, and transition from sales over to our operations team. I've been doing this for about 30 years.
Great. So with that, let's talk about some of the trends and technology that really shaped 2023. And the first thing I want to talk about is generative AI. I don't know, Keith, if you want to kick us off on this topic.
Sure. You know what probably a lot of people don't know is ChatGPT's been around for a long time. It's been around for many, many years, and version 3.5 came out late last year. And then about 6 months later in March, version 4 came out, and it caught a lot of attention. The monumental jump it made from that early version of 3.5 to 4 in a 6 month period of time. I mean, the accuracy and the sophistication of that technology and where AI came, I think few could believe. And it's put it on companies' radar since. And, you know, since about March or so, they're talking to it as a generational technology. They're talking to it in terms of there's kind of three big trends that have hit industry, at least in our lifetime. You know, the personal computer, cloud computing, and the internet. And generative AI, they're saying, is going to fit in one of those buckets, be a fourth, or could be bigger than all three. And, you know, I think with what we're all seeing and reading, there's no sign of slowing down. I think if we kind of look back on 23, what clients are doing, they're wanting to know a little bit more about it. Some are adopting it, but mainly, what is it? How do I secure it? What are some sample use cases I should be considering? So I think looking back, that's what we're going to see. And you know, we'll talk a little bit later about kind of looking forward with AI and generative AI. But I think we're going to see a massive application of it to enable a lot of the use cases that folks are thinking about. And I think the technology is going to continue to evolve at a pace that's going to be difficult to keep up with, frankly. And I think a lot of people are going to need help keeping up with that pace of change and the capabilities that are coming with generative AI.
And, you know, I'd probably just chime in, you know, on the generative AI front, just real quickly here. You know, the underpinnings of AI is certainly relies upon data. And, you know, as Keith kind of mentioned, you know, AI particularly has been around for a number of years, and generative AI has been very formative. But the data pieces that underpin AI really feed into the models, be them large language models or historically machine learning type models. Those elements, you know, are really going to become a lot more approachable for organizations. And so, you know, I think what it was trending in 2023 becomes, you know, exponentially hotter as we get into 2024, as people really figure out ways to harness the power of the technology. But you know, data is going to be a kind of a core part of the fuel in the equation. So
yeah. And you know, I mentioned use cases, but I could probably talk about those for a minute. I think the use cases that are clear and obvious to a lot of folks are, and you can kind of see on the screen there, driving consistency across the organization through generative AI. What that means is through natural language processing, you can push a whole bunch of data into OpenAI, for example, or Azure OpenAI is what we use a lot. And regardless of how you ask it questions or query that information through just natural language, it gives very consistent results back. And therefore, you know, use cases like a help desk or things like that, we're seeing that's been a use case in almost every company that we've talked to about it. So you've got kind of knowledge-based querying and help desk querying, but then standard operating procedures. So in bigger companies, we've we've all kind of been there, like finding the document on how you do something within the company. You no longer got to search through drive after drive and folder after folder to find it. There's a bot that you interact with, ask it those questions, and behind the scenes, it's capturing all the information that's out there and spitting it back to you, and it's going to give the same result regardless of how you ask it. Now, don't confuse that with the what we would call probably the older chatbot technology. So in chatbots, the answers are pretty much hard coded. So it's looking for some keywords, and if it finds that word, it's going to give you an answer. This is not that at all. This is truly interacting with it like we're talking today and typing it and getting results back, and then asking further questions on the information of the data and getting another result back from that, and taking it in whatever direction you want to go and getting applicable information back, and building it builds some intelligence and presents the data in the way you want to see it, not how like the older chatbots would do it. So I think that's a very important distinction as people start seeing more of this.
Yeah, and if you look at, the point of this AI is to make good recommendations to help you come up with new ideas, but it all starts with having captured good, useful data to begin with, and that's where the ERP and the CRM systems come in. These are systems where you're defining all your data initially, you're performing transactions, and people are building up a wealth of data that's just sitting there and not really being utilized or leveraged. And AI comes in able to learn the patterns and the structure of that data and then start generating more predictive data to help you understand um, what results you can get based on changes that you make in your procedures, in your data, in your approaches to business.
Yeah, definitely. I think another trend that we saw with our client base, especially last year, was realigning and evaluating employee productivity. So I don't know if there's somebody who wants to kick off that and kind of what we've seen this last year.
I can kick it
You
off.
know, oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
good. No, go ahead, George.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm dealing on the operations side and the systems that are actually planning the employees' schedules and their productivity, capturing the data that they record, and I think that we've seen a trend over the last several years of one, data collection getting a lot more sophisticated as internet technologies evolve, the ability to collect data real time from remote locations. Um, Also, tools that are graphically representing the scheduling, the resource capacity, as well as the load that we're putting on those resources. But even more than that, being able to really to push useful information. I think we have a slide that deals with this in a little more depth later, but being able to tell the employees, communicate to them clearly what it is that they're expected to do, and providing them with specifications and quality information, and then giving them good tools to report what they did, and then the AI can kick in and analyze that information and then provide better recommendations.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I just recently talked to our clients at Fin, Feather, and Fur, and it was a really interesting scenario that they had there because they had a point of sale system that wasn't integrated directly into their ERP solution. And so every day they were taking these manual processes of taking the information and putting into their back end system. And it just becomes habit, right? Like that's just how we do things. And as they started looking at where they could become more efficient and where they could really harness their employee productivity when they integrated their point of sale to their back office, I mean, now they're saving hundreds and hundreds of hours every year, and they have a better understanding of what's in their inventory at any time. So there's so much of those small things that add up to be big things.
So
Yeah, and our
Brandon, I
data
think that
management tools can integrate that data between the POS and the ERP system and actually pull the data from two separate systems together. So all the analysis you can do on the demand management versus fulfillment, all the customer data that's in those POS transactions, that when married with the data, the inventory data that's in the ERP system, can yield a lot of useful analysis.
George, you had me at data, but the good thing about all of this is, there. as Sabrina, as you're highlighting in the case of the one customer, there's so many scenarios where the gaps can be adequately filled, with technology to really support, much more streamlined, productive experience. And, I happen to sit on a team within Velosio that's focused a lot on, kind of the low code, no code end of automation and apps, and, the ability to kind of take what is maybe an arduous business process that fits between two systems, and kind of make that go away in favor of an app or some automation is really a huge thing. And I think that's probably only going to kind of transform even more as 2024 comes around.
Yeah. Another area that I think, is big this last year, but it's going to be big again next year, the unified cloud-based platform. And maybe, George, you can talk a little bit here about, the consolidation, especially between CRM and ERP.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, prior to even integrating the two, we've had a struggle over the last decade getting people to push their financial enterprise data to the cloud. There was initially that distrust of the cloud, but we've seen that's pretty much flipped around now, and people actually trust the cloud-based platforms more to provide a secure environment. And now that we've got multiple systems out in the cloud, we're able to start using common interface technologies to pass the data back and forth between these systems. It's a lot easier to integrate two cloud-based systems that are using common standardized APIs than it was to take systems that are physically located maybe out at the stores on a POS out there, and then maybe in the accounting, wherever the centralized accounting is done. So by unifying those and getting them all out in the cloud, we're able to connect them a lot tighter. We can also tighten up where we used to have to do lots of batch integrations where you didn't have the data from the prior day or even the week until it arrived in a batch. Are able to just be posting live all day long in real time, which really pulls those silos together, and you can be alerted of conditions that need to be corrected a lot quicker. Also, the other thing is that by eliminating those silos, really it joins all of the users at the hip and makes one process flow cleanly from one to the next. We can see a lot less now companies that are having to run giant dumps of data into spreadsheets from different programs and then try to pull that data together. Excel is kind of a hammer, and all the data is just a nail, right? And we just use Excel for everything in the past, but now we're able to basically use Power BI as like a 3D data printer, right? And really get a lot more out of that data because it's live, because it's integrated, because it's tightly tied together.
I mean, there's actually a lot to talk about in this topic. I think you're seeing, you look at the tooling itself. I mean, we predominantly deal with the Microsoft stack, and if you look across the tooling and how unified, some of their key technologies are becoming, whether it's the tooling used in Azure, whether it's the Microsoft Fabric for data that Trey will talk about in a little bit, whether it's even Teams and Windows. I mean, you're really seeing this stuff become highly integrated. But on the same token, you're seeing a lot of new technology come out, and that you do need to integrate to that George mentioned. And I think um, the ability for companies to do what I'd probably call a fit for purpose evaluation in this tooling. What do you really need? What's business differentiating for you versus what's kind of off the shelf stuff that'll work? And then how do you integrate all that is really where a lot of this is going to come in. So just because I think the tooling is becoming more robust, more unified, more integrated, you're seeing a lot of new stuff continue to come to market, and you will continue to see that. And how do you evaluate and incorporate all that in? It is something I think companies need to be considering too. Otherwise, you're going to get inundated with all this AI stuff that's going on, all the cloud stuff that's going on, all this different technology. So having that process in place or a methodology for somewhat evaluating that, I think will be really important.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with the comments. And as 2023 has unfolded, we're just seeing more and more customers that are moving towards cloud native infrastructure for their data, particularly. They maybe have leveraged in historical times, an on-premise database of sorts. But the fact of the matter is, once they've kind of made that move to the cloud and have put their trust behind certain business applications, the need to have the flexibility to pull from all those different applications into a singular cloud-based environment has really kind of accelerated that path for a lot of our customers. And as Keith mentioned, Microsoft Fabric, which I'll probably talk about a lot more later, but is something that Microsoft has brought forward as an evolution of their Azure platform, around data lakes and the other pieces that kind of make up a true unified analytics platform. And there's just been no better time than to kind of explore how that technology kind of supports the demands of unifying the data that's spread across the cloud.
Yeah.
And it's
And
kind of nice on the Microsoft. Oh, good. Sorry.
no, you go ahead, George.
On the Microsoft platform, especially in the Dynamics world, we have for transacting, we have the Dataverse on the back end that pulls the data from the various systems together. That's for transacting. But then for the analysis side, we have the data lakes and what Trey mentioned, the Fabric. And so you have a for the full gamut of technologies that you need to both transact efficiently, but also to analyze.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention, I don't know if George, if you worked on this project with Kidder Matthews, but they are a very large real estate firm, and they unified their platforms this last year, a year and a half, and they gave tools to their agents out in the field so that they could automate their expense capture and get that back into the office faster than ever before. And now it's streamlined and it's done automatically for them, so that they don't have to take that time to do the manual processes. So that's another big benefit that I've seen with our clients is in that unified platform, is just the automation of so many tasks.
Yeah, I wasn't on that particular project, but in addition to gathering the data quickly, we've seen with these expense systems that you can pre-authorize limits of spending on different projects, different GL accounts. So you get a lot more control over how the expenses are done, and that's managed centrally from the ERP system, but pushed out to these remote devices. Additionally, you can report mileage on them. You can be reporting expenses against projects or against budgets on the general ledger, and ultimately you can even transfer them to time and expense type billings. So yeah, it does a lot, both in shortening the time span, but also in giving you control over those transactions.
And the subtle undertone of unifying around the cloud is that 2023 was probably a bit of a wacky business year for a lot of organizations. And for those that were on the positive side of the wacky equation, they needed to find scale relatively quickly. And the cloud is obviously exponentially better than trying to figure out how to kind of create your own capacity when you need it. So.
Yeah. Well, I know we have quite a few people on the line today. So before we start talking about what's coming next year, I'd love to hear what technology did you use in 2023? You can select as many options as apply to you. There's plenty that are not on this list, but just hoping we can get a feel of what people on the line have been looking at in 2023. And as those results come in, Keith, Trey, George, any predictions on what you think we're going to see out of these polls?
I'm already biased because I'm watching it happen live here with a one of the types of technologies that we're talking about here. Cloud computing obviously is gonna is gonna continue to expand, make penetration. I believe collaboration. I use Teams more and more every year, and they're finding all kinds of great uses for it. And we integrate it now with CRM and ERP too. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the themes will continue. If I had to guess, the cloud computing is going to be up there, and I think certainly with all the work from home and remote nature, communication and the collaboration tools will certainly be high. I think more and more companies are talking about data analytics and starting to take action on that more than ever. So I think all these are very applicable. Probably, yeah. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
My
it
favorite,
looks
my
like.
favorite phrase, my
Sorry, go
favorite
ahead,
phrase
Trey.
is, yeah. My favorite phrase is "talk data to me." So I'm gonna put my money on that one. But
I love it. It looks like we had quite a few people respond, and it looks like there's a pretty wide spread here, like communication and collaboration tools. Almost everyone is using those, and rounding out kind of at the lower end is the smart technology, IoT devices. But I wonder if that's something that we'll see more of in 2024. So 2024, let's jump into it. Let's jump into these predictions that we have. So the first one, higher employee efficiency and productivity. Does someone want to kick us off on this?
Yeah, I mean, I took the 2023 generative AI, the slide we let off with, so I think it's going to be a natural evolution here, right? You heard me talk earlier. A lot of people want to hear about it. What is it? Um, slight introduction to it, and they're kind of going back now and thinking about, hey, what's my competition doing in this space? What do I need to be considering and doing? What potential use cases do we have to get started? I think you're going to see a tremendous adoption of pilot use cases in 24. Everybody is still going to be figuring this out. There's no question, but I think people are going to quickly come up with ideas and want to see pilots and proof of concepts in the space, and probably a few key things that they'll want to start rolling out. Um, the kind of in that vein, there's been this automate everything approach that's been going on for several years, and that'll certainly continue. And I think Trey mentioned earlier, low code power platform. We're seeing certainly an increase in that consumption. What clients are doing with that. What I think is going to be different that we haven't seen in 24 is the introduction of generative AI into the low code automation revolution that's going on. You know, th- a lot of this tooling can write that code now, and you can interact with it and tell it what you want it to develop, and it'll start doing that for you and get you 80-90% of the way there, and then you do your tweaks and stuff. That will definitely be a trend in 24. And then I think you got to continue to talk about IoT. That's not going away. And I don't know, the last number I saw, somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 billion IoT devices online by 2025, so that's only a year
Wow.
away. Yes, and if you think about, so I think we're going to continue to see cost and price points for that hardware to continue to decline. I think if you can only imagine the amount of data that 40 billion IoT devices generate and what companies can and need to do with that data, you'll see. I think we'll see growth in the data analytics behind IoT data, and again, the use of AI to analyze, predict, and generate content from all of that data that companies are creating in the IoT space.
I might just kind of tag on to that, and here comes the broken record data guy, right? But it goes back to you can't manage what you can't measure, right? And so the achieving efficiency, achieving productivity in a lot of ways is all about kind of the things that are being measured and improved upon and the like. And you look at what IoT does, as Keith was saying, the volume of devices will create a lot of additional data for businesses. I personally, my bias is I think that the technology is moving towards, kind of noise filtering in a lot of ways, so that, people can get out of the kind of the redundant stuff that's noisy, that disrupts their day or doesn't really kind of possibly add value to their day, and gets them really focused on the outcomes that need to be created. And I think the data and analytics has, kind of a core role around that. I also genuinely believe that in the not too distant future, there's going to be a lot of conversational analytics that are happening that's just going to completely kind of change the way people make decisions and up their efficiency and productivity levels for sure.
And I think on the ERP and the CRM, basically on the enterprise operational systems side, um, we're more and more bringing the data people into the pre-sales discussion, because if you think about it, most people come to us and they say, I need a system and I need it to have these features, these modules, and do these things, and they're not really coming to us saying, hey, we're a business and these are the business challenges that we face. Here's our mission, here's our values, here's our current strategy and the things that we need to achieve, and here's the gaps, and show us how the ERP system and the CRM can contribute to that. And almost all of those things at the higher level that management is looking at involves the ability to do really good analysis and use that data to predict what's going to happen in the future and to know what they need to do differently in order to get different outcomes. So if my prediction for this year is that we're going to be involving those teams in our pre-sales more and trying to determine what outcomes the customers are wanting from a business perspective before we start trying to pick out all the features and how we're going to deploy them. And that's going to continue through the operational implementation phase of those projects. Um, One thing that we always harp on the automation side is don't automate a process that you, one, don't understand, and two, haven't proven that you can do it manually correctly. Otherwise, you're probably automating error and just committing errors with a lot more efficiency than ever. So uh, one thing that's really nice though is that these data collection tools can now help us to really identify the areas where we're doing the same thing over and over, and those things lend themselves to automation. And so the data will expose the areas where we're repeating the same task over and over, and then we can then use the automation tools to do that. About a decade or so ago, when IoT kind of came out, everyone was really excited about it, and we talked about it a lot, but we didn't see it deployed in a way that it was obvious that we were deploying IoT. But I think it was a little bit stealthy in that our cell phones are IoT devices. They're collecting data about where we are, what we're doing, and apps that you have installed on your phone are able to collect that data and use it. Additionally, it's just very common right now for truck fleets, that are delivering products to have IoT devices in them, gathering, tracking where the truck is, anticipating the schedule it can run, trying to optimize their routes. Um, we even have inventory control devices for like field services companies that consume inventory in the field doing repairs and maintenance. As they consume inventory, that can be tracked out in the field. So I think a lot of IoT has been kind of sneaking in on us and not getting credit for being IoT. Um, but that said, there is a lot more that we can do, and that I think you'll see coming out in this next year. You saw that the poll said that IoT was kind of underrepresented in this area. My guess is that's because you're probably doing some IoT that you're not even recognizing. And then we have to do a better job of helping companies understand the opportunities that they have for using the Internet of Things to, for example, if you have a factory, all of that machinery, most of it has data collection tools on it that are counting the cycles, for example. And once a die has been cycled a certain number of times, it needs to go in to be tuned and repaired and touched up. Those things can all be tracked, but a lot of companies don't realize that their equipment has the ability to do that, has the ability to talk to their plant maintenance software and to schedule work orders to do the maintenance on the machinery and the tools and the dies. So I'm thinking you will see IoT continue to expand in this next year.
I think you're probably right on that. Like, do people even realize they're using some of these devices? And Kevin made a comment too. He appreciated your comment about don't automate things you don't understand or haven't already proven as the right thing. So let's go to our next prediction here: solving labor challenges through technology.
I can kind of kick us off. I think again, I don't want AI to be the whole topic here, but um, you know, companies are going to want to start using it. They're going to use it both as a way to avoid hiring if they don't have to, or they're going to use it as a way to make their employees as efficient as possible. I think that's somewhat of a no-brainer. What I think is also going to impact companies, and I think IT needs to or will play a bigger role in managing this sprawl that could start to happen. So you're going to see different AI technologies. You're going to see Chat GPT. You're going to see things like Copilot start to get rolled out. You're going to see the different automation toolings and technologies that are out there to drive this efficiency that companies are going to want in 24. And so really, maybe it's not as much being the go-to technologists for all of this stuff that you traditionally would have been, but really making sure that this stuff is handling your data the way you want it to be, that you know what's out there, that it's being managed appropriately, and still kind of that balance of making sure your users got as much capability as you can and want to give them. So that is going to be probably as big of point in 24 around all this new tech that's coming out, because there is so much of it coming now, probably as much or more than has been in a long time.
The way that I kind of tend to think about things, no big surprise, data is part of it, but the if we look at maybe the realignment of positions, and maybe it's the reassignment of responsibility, and so part of that I think is the assignment of responsibility for making decisions. There was a time in the average American household that everybody had one source for water, and that was the well that was outside. And then we've evolved to the point that we probably all have several faucets and other things that happen within our house. Not different than kind of the sources of data in the organization. At one point, the boardroom was the only recipients of information to kind of direct where the business goes. Now it's showing up alongside of user experiences and applications. It's something that we can ideally prompt more and all those sorts of things. That is a real kind of root opportunity to solve some of the labor challenges using technology, because we can bring the decision making just that much closer to the time of a decision needing to be made. An example is traveling this week. I'm in and out of a hotel. The person behind the desk had all the information they needed at hand to really kind of engender a good experience. They didn't have to go off and get other information from other sources, those sorts of things. I think that's a big part of it. And I think the things that organizations do from a technology standpoint to bring the data into the context for the user at the point that they need it is going to make a lot of difference, especially in a labor challenged economy, whether it's fewer workers or fewer skills, to apply to a particular role. It'll be a big difference maker.
And then do you think the decision making gets pushed down further as well, Trey, to the people that
I
have the data
do.
and make the decisions?
I do. Yeah, I was around on a roundtable with some customers not too long ago, and they said one of their biggest encumbrances to growth as an organization was getting their information correct to the point that they felt like they could trust people to have what they needed to make decisions at lower levels in the business, and so as that kind of continues to evolve and data gets to be more refined and credible and suitable for drinking from the tap, then we're in a good spot. So
Yep.
Yeah, and labor is it's really tight right now, and everybody, people as a resource are extremely valuable and highly utilized right now. So that ability to balance their load against their capacity, but also give them some sort of a work-life balance is really important. And I know, like Trey's mentioned, he's been on the road all week, and yet just with teams, we've been able to communicate about prepping for this. And I've been involved in a couple other meetings with him on completely different topics, both of us remote, on the road, crazy schedules, but able to just get information back and forth to each other. And that's all. Um, that's an evolving technology that we couldn't have done nearly as well 10 years ago, and it's going to continue to get better this year. Regarding the hybrid work tools, just yesterday we were in a discovery meeting with a client who, he says, look, I got people who are out on the shop floor after report their time against jobs. I got people in the back office who are punching in hourly employees, and then I've got people who are salary. And I need my tools to work with. I don't want to have three different time and attendance tracking systems. I want everything to be in one place. And it was kind of nice to be able to look at what I have available both in the Microsoft stack and in the partner network and say, yeah, I got like 10 different ways I can solve this and really make them happy. Additionally, if you're one of those employees out on the shop floor talking about employee engagement tools, imagine you're a shop worker. It's time for you to clock in, start working on a job. You wave your badge at a terminal. It lists all the work coming down the pipeline for you. You pick the job you're going to work on. It pulls up the bill of materials for the job. It pulls up the operations, gives you detailed instructions of what you need to do for your step in the operation on that part. It gives you the quality measurements that you need to take and tells you which ones you just have to look at, which ones you have to actually record in the system. And these are tools that enable us to kind of engage and work, communicate a tremendous amount of useful information to our employees to help them do their job. And on top of that, they can use the query tools and ask the system questions in natural language, and it can give them answers too. So as far as addressing gaps in the workforce and labor shortages with technology, interfacing with the HR systems to identify the skills needed that you have in your workforce, compare those to the skills needed in your workload, identify those gaps, help you, mainly these days it's with training, right? You plug the gaps with training, but also to help you in your hiring. These are all things that as in the next year, you'll see these continue to get refined and improved upon.
Wonderful. Unless there's anything else on that, we can move to the next one. Increased focus on mitigating risk. I know we've talked about this a lot. This is a common theme, always has been, and interested in hearing your thoughts on what we're seeing with cybersecurity. Are there trends? Are we seeing, more cyber attacks, them coming in different types of ways, and how AI kind of plays into that?
Yeah, sure. I think if we would be doing this 5 years ago, we would have had this slide on here, and I think 5 years from now we'll have this slide on here. So it's not going anywhere, right? I mean, we all know that, we're all seeing it and dealing with it. I think probably about 18 months ago, I would say we were seeing a peak of this for some reason. I don't know if it was everybody starting to work was at that point remote and still hadn't figured different security tooling and technologies out to protect folks and their companies. But by far, that was the peak I'd seen in a long time. And knock on wood, it's we're just not hearing about it quite as much, but we still deal with it quite a bit. And so I think two things came of that. I think companies quickly realized when they were breached, they either didn't have cyber insurance or didn't meet the criteria needed to have cyber insurance coverage. And so it's something companies really need to consider. The bar to be eligible to be covered for cyber insurance continues to go up. So there's just a baseline of policy controls, technologies that are needed, to have a basic level of security within your company that would make you eligible for insurance. So something companies are continuing to evaluate. The second thing, I think, again, this isn't going anywhere, but it's going to continue to refine, and I think we'll see a much higher increase of more sophisticated phishing attacks with AI. So again, going back to AI, here's the bad side of it. There's examples out there now where AI can take a snippet on the internet of someone's voice and replicate that into their full language, and then use that to call a family member at home because they can figure that information out on the internet and solicit money or scam you in that way. And that's actually going on today. So if you so that's one avenue. So I think personally people need to be very cautious about how they're interacting with video, phone, all of that stuff that's going on, because it's going to be slightly different than we've seen in the past. And then I also think the sophistication of phishing attacks is going to continue to increase, because now these AI bots can take publicly available information and through generative AI make very compelling graphics, videos, things like that, and send to you that feel very much like the real thing and something you need to take action on. So I think people have to be as cautious as ever with stuff that's been going on for a long time, especially around, again, phishing, and not just phishing through email, but phishing through phone, phishing through all the different interactions that you might have. So I think we're definitely going to see that in 24.
Yep, no, without a doubt. And from a data perspective, particularly, I mean, data is increasingly becoming an asset, and mitigating risk is loosely defined as covering your assets and just making sure that you're not exposed. But more importantly, as you think about data being kind of the fuel for a lot of things that the organization does, it will have a greater target on it, and the bad actors, most likely will exist within the organization instead of outside of it. And so there's great opportunities for governance, additional security. Microsoft Fabric, which we'll talk about a little bit, kind of has good pieces of that, along with companion technologies like Purview, for example. So I really kind of fully expect that this area, as much as it'll continue to be part of the conversation, the underlying conversation will be how are we managing risk around our data.
I just have two quick comments on this. on the cybersecurity side, even if a clever AI does convince an ERP or a CRM user to download a file which infects their local network, their cloud-based data is still totally protected, and they're not going to lose their ERP or their CRM data. Um, as far as business resiliency, I have had several instances of companies who even though their data is protected from disk failure, that kind of thing, they've run a process in their ERP system, usually some sort of a global accounting process, maybe that revalues inventory, revalues some transactions, ran it with the wrong filters, just made some sort of a mistake. The Microsoft business or the cloud backs up their databases, and they were able to just basically restore back right to the moment before they made that error, and had that data restored pretty quickly. So you get that protection against the business screw ups, and you can roll your data back, and so anyhow, those are kind of my two comments on mitigating the risk.
Those are great, great points. And a really, really good question came in, not specifically about security and risk, but really about all the technologies that we're talking about in general. The question is, what kinds of skills are going to be needed to deploy these kinds of technologies? Is it about new data or business intelligence people, AI people? And then what about the challenge of highly technical people who aren't always perfectly business savvy?
Wow, do we have another webinar? Because
Yeah,
there's a lot there
it is
to
a broad
unpack,
question.
but I would just say the greatest source of skills are those that are within the organization at the moment, because you don't ever want to look past those. But um, there is another generation entering the workforce that brings kind of their own kind of unique composition of skills to the table, that maybe were learned instinctively at a much younger age than many of us. So I would say that those are going to be the ones to kind of watch out for, and how you kind of best take advantage of the skills that they bring. But just in general terms, there was a time when an organization had 10% of their workforce was analysts. I think we have moved to the spot where everybody's an analyst for about 10% of the time, and so I think that those are skills that are well encouraged at a minimum. So
Yeah, not to put my sales hat on, but you're going to have your internal team that has a certain set of skills and takes a stab at solving a problem. If you give your Microsoft partner a call, we can spend a few hours with you, take a look at what you did, and maybe give you some advice that might save you a lot of going down the wrong path. And we just kind of assume that your workforce is in a constant state of training and learning and acquiring new skills, just like ours is. And we can help you to steer as you go your resources to not only what do they need to learn, but what are the resources out there where they can get that training, certification, and of course we can augment your staff well if you have challenges that are beyond your current skills.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Our next prediction here around customer preferences and experience evolution and how what the customer expects from businesses is shifting.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick on this one. Most of our ERP implementations involve some sort of an integration with an online store. The tools for doing that integration have dramatically improved over the last several years, and we expect them to continue to improve. Some of them are tool sets that are fully customizable. Some of them are more template driven that allow you to just quickly out of the box with some templates get a quick integration um, up and going. Um, Noted here an online ongoing decline in brick and mortar retail, but we're still seeing a lot of omni-channel where a person may order online, they may come into the store, they may go to a trade show and get something, and the system just needs to know who that customer is, and they may have some sort of a membership card that where they're collecting points, and the systems are getting more and more friendly towards doing that type of thing. Of course, the increased need for virtual agents, that's a very common requirement and is met with the tool set that's included with Dynamics 365 CRM. And of course, that data can be fed into the ERP system. Um, and Microsoft keeps refining those tools also. Um, our our app store for add-ons and extensions to the ERP system. I remember when it first came out years ago, there were a couple dozen in there on day one, and now there's just thousands of extensions available for Business Central. It's hard to keep up, but it's just like your cell phone. You don't buy a cell phone that has everything you want on it. You buy the cell phone, and then you get your golf app and your Delta flight booking app. You get the apps that specialize the phone for your individual needs, and the ERP and the CRM systems are the same way. We provide the core set of tools, and then we build upon that with extensions, and that the App Store is going to continue to grow explosively. Um, and I guess I kind of already addressed it, the omni-channel thing. Customers, they expect that you know them no matter what arm of your business they approach, and that you know everything about them and you're able to help them out. And because the systems are all integrated and continually become more integrated, you'll be able to meet those needs.
Wonderful. And I
Yeah.
feel like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like a lot of this used to be really expensive, and only the biggest companies could afford some of these technologies that the customers are expecting. It feels like to me, it seems like, we're moving towards a place where every business has access and can afford this.
Yeah, certainly. There's some commoditization and stuff that you used to only be able to get on the very large ERP platforms. Those technologies are now available, and they have pricing and services that are a little more scalable to the market. It's interesting because a lot of them, instead of trying to sell to bigger and bigger customers, are saying, we've developed this tool for a bigger customer. Now, how do I penetrate the medium and small business markets? And so you see a lot of tools like that.
Yeah. Well, I know we only have about 10 minutes left. We still have a lot of important information, and I think this is where Trey is really going to shine here, right? So let's talk about
Well,
data strategy and digital transformation, Trey.
yeah, no, cool, excellent, and so thankful to have kind of this as a talking point, at the end of this discussion, because I think that most people, are at the point, I think that they've made some investments around some core applications and core systems. They maybe have been at a point where they can take information out of a particular system, through some reporting or other things, but they haven't necessarily had the chance to really sit back and think about the totality of the data they collect. And just touching base back on the prior slide around customer experiences, I was just simply going to add that if an organization is not actively evaluating the preferences and experiences of their customer, somebody else is. And so that really kind of goes back to data strategy and the way the organization leverages data. If there's a constituency that sits in your organization that doesn't believe data is valuable, and they generate a lot of data, you probably need to be talking with them first, about the things that they should be thinking about or the things they should be doing. There's just been no better time, I don't think, to really talk about data strategy as a path forward, as a kind of the underpinning of a digital transformation that an organization is either taking or is about to take, because of the things that Microsoft's doing, particularly with their technology around Fabric, the just the nice evolution of what they're doing in the cloud into a real nicely, neatly contained application. So I'll kind of leave it at that. I know I've got one more slide to talk to in just a moment, maybe, but see if Keith or George have anything to add.
No, I think I'm excited to get to the next slide, actually, Trey. I think this is really going to lay the foundation for, I think, where a lot of this is going. So,
Yep, I'm on board with that.
No, perfect. Yeah, and for those that aren't aware, Microsoft announced earlier in calendar year 2023 that they were coming out with Fabric. They actually have a full range of technology on Azure, from their data lakes through the Synapse analytics technologies, all the way through to Power BI. But they chose consciously to wrap those technologies up in something called Microsoft Fabric. Microsoft Fabric they actually released at the end of November here in 2023. And where that has changed is One Lake has become the underpinning. It's a data lake platform that really becomes the singular source for all of an organization's data for the purposes of analyses and other kind of downstream data workloads. Their technology is there to acquire the data through things like Data Factory, through all the way through to Power BI to support analysis. And the data activator is really the newest part of the Microsoft Fabric platform, and that it will actually proactively monitor and provide alerts around business use cases that the organization sets up. And so what that really means is the data is literally starting to kind of alert and talk to you. And in the middle of there, where you see all the boxes that say Synapse, those are just different experiences that the organization can have within their Microsoft Fabric capacity, be it data engineering and transforming the data, data warehousing and supporting a variety of different analytics. The real-time analytics piece, particularly suitable for the IoT data collection, and then of course data science for where the world is going from an AI, machine learning, experimentation, ability to kind of predict and show what will happen in the future, for organizations. And around that is a variety of other kind of technologies that complement it. But Microsoft Fabric, I think, is if it's not the hottest thing in 2024 from a Microsoft standpoint, it's going to be pretty close. And so I couldn't be more excited about where we're going on top of the Fabric platform.